we've got three gentlemen to weigh in on this matter. But first, we've got Mr. Joseph Enyang, who is the president of Nigerians for Super Energy, and then Adeola Samuel, president of Nigerian Electricity Consumers Network, is also a lawyer. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on this morning.
Well, thanks for having us.
But we'll also have Mr. George Utomi, he's the director with the Eco Discourse. He'll join us for our Skype as well today.
Let me first correct the National Coordinator All Electricity Consumer Protection Forum.
All Electricity Consumers
Consumer
Forum.
Protection Forum.
Okay, so consumers and Nigerians are well represented this morning on the, on the platform. So, do consumers, will they be happy having heard the last part of his speech ban saying, well, the forum will ultimately decide?
It's quite funny that the man is speaking from both sides of the mouth, in the sense that I want to say, without being immodest, that that statement came as a result of the fact that immediately they sent that to a platform we are all in, including himself, the minister, and everybody stakeholder. I issued a release right there that this cannot be, and we are not going to allow it because, number one, there is no fulfillment of Section 76, subsection 1, 2, paragraph A, B, C, D, as is stated in Electric Power Sector Reform Act 2005. And again, the fact remains that it is not even feasible, not to talk about, it's impossible for you to tinker with any increase, regardless of how you colored it, when the last increase was February 3rd, 2016.
When you say something was sent, pardon me, what was sent originally? What was the message that was put out originally?
Exactly. What was said was that there is going to be an increase in electricity tariff that is going to be up to 79%.
That was what was in the
That was
initial
what
message.
was said initially.
Who put this message out?
The message came directly from NEC website. And immediately that statement was issued by me on that platform. The vice chairman of National Electric Power Sector Reform Act, we were together on that platform, quickly said, fake news. And I said, and other people that were there that received it now replied that about 4 discos have clarified. And thereafter, there was a statement from ANED man, Chief Sunday Odunton, to highlight the movement of this increase, in the sense that the increase will be gradual, and at the same time, once will take place in January, and by April, we'll witness another one, and in 2021, in accordance with the Power Sector Recovery Program, which was launched by then Ministers of Power.
Of which you disagree with?
I said, like, seriously, like, you know, because there was a position paper in conjunction with Nigerian Labour Congress, which we did, and together with Professor Yemi Okel of Unilag, and we disagree with it. But unfortunately, the government of Nigeria don't listen to the people, except we are on the street and we make them to realize that you are supposed to serve us. And even when you look at this, I have perused over and over again since this incident happened. There was nowhere increase to electricity tariff was mentioned there. I have everything here. This is executive summary. This is the whole bunch. I was part and parcel of it. I was at the power ministry on that day to discuss with the minister. So I look at the whole thing, and when they now hints this increase on this same power, in fulfillment of this same power sector recovery program, and I was like, oh, this is a fraud. You want to petition Section 76, as it's been stated that before you can do any increase, there must be consultation with the stakeholders.
Yeah, but isn't that what he said now?
He said it. I am telling you the origin of him changing his statement right now. Because immediately with that message was plated in that platform, they went to their website and declared there is no increase.
Well, actually, the NRLC, again, they were supposed to be on today, but they said they've got some, I think, matters that they have to attend to in another part of the country today, so they couldn't be here to explain some of these things, which we also did notice on the website and the statement that followed after the story was published in the media previously. But Mr. Yang, can there ever be super energy without value for money? Because they're arguing that, look, they use the term cost-reflective tariff to justify this.
Well, again, thanks for having me. One of the things that really happens is that things are supposed to be done properly. When we talk about value, what value are you offering? Because we have been on this for quite a long time, as you know. And that what we have always said is that give value and the citizens will pay for it. Yes, there are few citizens who may not want to pay for it, but the average citizen will pay for that value that is reflected. What just happened was the typical scenario where somebody floats a balloon out there to see whether it's going to stand. And it got busted, like he said. So the question is, we're looking for value. If you want to increase your tariffs, let it be based on performance. So far, we have not seen performance. Very few people have seen performance.
But you know, some argue that value is a two-way thing. So if you're expecting value, perhaps you need to also give value. And that's what, you know, the distribution companies, ANED, they're saying that, you know, they have factored in a lot of things for them. And it doesn't make sense. To give the example of, you know, when you're making bread, for example, and you know how much it costs to make that bread, would you sell it, you know, below that? So I'm saying value is a two-way thing. So as much as, you know, consumers are expecting value, don't you think it's fair for the service providers to also expect value in return?
Okay, let me start off by saying there is nothing like free markets. Anybody who believes in a free market idea is living in a fool's paradise. It's about 2 years ago that the United States of America allowed crude oil to be exported from its shores since the oil embargo. That's not free markets. So there is only national interest markets. What is good for your citizens is what the government should be doing. There is no free market. Value, gas that is our predominant producer of electricity, is in the backyard of my grandmother and my late mother in Ibuno. The government owns it. Me, you do not own it. So it's already a value. It's part of that process. Electricity or power as a whole, or energy as a whole, is what drives an economy. And until this issue is solved, Nigeria is not going anywhere.
All right, let's bring in Mr. George Tommy. He's the director of the Code Disco. He joins us via Skype this morning. Mr. Tommy, good morning, and thank you for joining us today. But if you could give us your impression, first from the perspective of the law, wherein, well, as you may have heard, about the requirements for even going ahead with this increase. Is it really stipulated there that the processes to increase, because as it was said that the NERC are not being level with Nigerians about what they really should be doing with this increase?
Yeah, there is clearly a requirement under the law for consultations, wide consultations, before any tariff increase. The procedure usually is for the discos, who are the last mile, to bring up the proposal. This is then considered by the regulator, and then he undertakes wide consultations. And based on the preponderance of opinion, they can then issue an order. But I'll also tell you that the privatization was founded on basic agreements. And these agreements came with a number of contractual obligations. One was to have cost-reflective tariffs. The MDAs, Ministry Department of and agencies, should pay their debts. 3, there must be recognition of appropriate pricing for gas, and then allowance given for inflation. And as a result, you have 2 types of tariff reviews. There's a minor review, which occurs once every 6 months, and then there's a major review, which occurs once every 5 years. This is to ensure that all the macroeconomic indices that affect the price of electricity, and not just in electricity, any product, are factored in when the pricing is done. Now, unfortunately, since privatization, these reviews have been done but never been implemented. For example, up until this review we're talking about, this order has just come out, the discos allow calculation for the dollar was at 190 naira to the dollar. I don't know when the last time the dollar was bought for 190 naira. But for the Gencos, it was 305. This regulation has now brought both of them together. You can't run away from the fact that foreign exchange has moved since privatization. That's got to be factored in. Then there's been inflation, which is a consequence of some of these factors that I mentioned about. There is also the gas issue. The gas producers themselves are reeling under a pricing regime that does not work for them. If you get appropriate gas, which is the feedstock for the thermal plants, which feed the generating companies, it's going to affect the price. The basic law of economics says that it's the forces of supply and demand that affect prices. So that's right. The start point. Then you go to the other. Okay, how do you hold the discos to service levels agreements? Now, and that's where the chicken and egg situation comes in. The discos argument is that what we are talking about is being contractually agreed. And it was never agreed that I should, for example, meter everybody before you provide the environment for me.
I'm going to be losing the sound from your communication, but if I could bring Mr. Samuel here, you heard how he's highlighted all of those requirements, because I mean, if they're investing, some of those things, he's talked about the fact that, look, really and truly, if they're not meeting up with those obligations, if you don't want some of these increases, they might just be out of business, and we lose that completely.
I want to punch out Mr. Itomi right away.
No, his argument, please.
His balloon.
Yes.
Sorry?
Don't puncture him. Don't puncture his argument.
He's mentioning and he's talking about performance agreement that they signed.
Okay.
And he said that they have an obligations. And part of those performance agreement obligations that they have neglected so far so good, in which will have bring about customer ready to pay as much as they bring to them. Number one, efficiencies in service delivery. 2, metering gap. Till today, as at the time they took over, they have what we call 8.5 million metering gap to meet. By the time they came in 2013, November 3rd, that is 8.5 million metering gap. Within 5 years, they have a gestation period of 18 months to fulfill. That is part of their performance contract agreement. Do they? No. Even the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission, in their wisdom, come up with what we call, is it CAPMI or CAMPI? And in other words, the scheme says that the consumer should pay 46,000 naira or thereabout. And within 2 months or within 60 days, if they are not metered, they should not pay. They should not be disconnected. The discourse never fulfilled that. Many consumers today pay their 46,000 naira to some of these discourse. There is no remittance, there is no meter. And the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission look away. He who come to equity must come with clean hands.
But from your consultations with these agencies, including the DISCOs and the NERC, many people have said over and over again that DISCOs are the weakest in the link. What are the challenges that they have raised, at this different point?
Even the Bible says if the foundation be destroyed, what can the righteous do? What about the foundations of the privatization? The privatization foundation is faulty ab initio.
Okay, quickly, Mr. Tommy would like to respond to some of what you highlighted before we lose that train of thought. Go ahead, Mr. Tommy.
Be accurate with our facts. There was no metering obligation of 18 months on the discos. It's 5 years under the performance agreements. How can you meter everybody in 18 months? That's not possible. But I agree with you that CAPMI, which came even before the privatization, was a means of supporting discos to meter their network. But that is done only because metering is a function of the tariff. So if you don't want to increase the tariff, then there must be some other way you will find to meter your tariff, your consumer area. So this is all a question of a liquidity crisis in NERC. It's not the fault of the discos. It may be a faulty privatization. I mean, the jury is still out there. But what is key is that we are dealing with an environment in which the cost of self-generation is humongous. As we speak today, many consumer groups in our franchise areas are approaching us to say, look, what will it take for us to get steady supply? And many of them are willing to pay cost-reflective tariffs, provided we make the investment that will give it to them. Now, when we have that kind of a promise, you can then go and look for the money to make the investment. But nobody will invest in an atmosphere in which there is absolutely no guarantee of returns. No businessman works like that. What you have just done, what NEC has just done, is been to reset the industry on account of the fact that in the last 5 years, no part of the obligations that was the government part was fulfilled. They finally come round to what we've been saying from the beginning, that the industry needs to be reset. It is the reset that is taking place. And all I can do is urge consumers to work with their individual distribution companies to see how we can find solutions to the entire problem. Because as my colleague on the program correctly said, it holds the key to the diversification of this economy. If we continue to go in this manner, we'll be back in another 5 years saying the same things, and people will leave us behind. So it is not just tariff for the sake of tariff. It is tariff that's aimed at productivity. And I keep using the telecoms example as for us all to see. Same resistance came when telecom services came, but everybody was told, just be calm down, calm down. And what did we see? The liberalization of the sector led to investment. Investment meant that there was competition. Competition ultimately brought prices down. This will happen in the power sector. This is just the beginning of the journey. What we need is patience. And then with regard to remedies for lack of performance, I can assure you, in a privatized environment, you have remedies.
Okay, let's bring it back to the studio here. I would like to take this up with Mr. Inyang. The law, Electricity Power Sector Reform Act, says in Section 76, sub 2A, allow a licensee that operates efficiently to recover the full costs of businesses' activities, including a reasonable return on the capital invested in the business. Is this happening?
Let's put it this way. That is one part of the law. You see, it's a win-win situation.
Value is two-way.
Value is a two-way thing. And part of what has been happening is that we have not seen performance from the discos. What? Even low-hanging fruit performance. I will tell you, as a resident today in Lekki, part of the eco distribution, what we have done as residents is to form a power committee. We have the eco distribution rep on that WhatsApp group. We are the ones who inform a co-distribution as to when there is a power outage, where, here, or there. We are the ones who are doing that.
Does that mean they don't have the
They
capacity
are
to know that?
low-tech.
No, does that mean they don't have the capacity to determine that?
They do not have the capacity to do that. You'll be shocked to know that today in Nigeria, 2020, your total switching station in Oshogbo is done by the phone. The guy picks up the phone and he says, Benin, I'm going to transfer power to you. It's done by the phone. These are things that have far past gone. I keep saying that part of what needs to move Nigeria forward is something we've come up with, and it's called decentralization, storage, efficiencies, and artificial intelligence. And when I mean artificial intelligence, I'm not talking super artificial intelligence. They are low-hanging fruits. There's Arduino, there's Raspberry. There are some low-hanging fruit things that can be done to know exactly what's happening. No distribution company in Nigeria knows when there's a power outage except is informed of it.
What do you think is responsible for that, really? Because, I mean, in time past, you would know from some switchboard in the or wherever it is. What is responsible for this?
You see, what is responsible for this is just technical skills. And let me give you an idea.
Aren't these things, sorry to butt in, aren't these things supposed to be a part of the whole as far as this whole privatization gig is
Yes,
concerned?
that was part of it. Also, the metering was part of it. You go to a filling station, you have to buy your pump, Abi, and go there for the person to use your pump in order to do that. No, it can't happen.
Do you think that it's the same thing, though? I mean, but you know, when you talk about the fact that some of these things are missing, doesn't that lend credence to the call for recapitalization, need for more investment so they can invest in infrastructure?
Sincerely speaking, part of what constitutes this so-called power sector recovery program, which they are looking to expire 2021, because it's a 5 years program, is recapitalization. When you look at the operational, what have you, according to the paragraph 2, operational and technical intervention, according to the paragraph 2, so paragraph B of this summaries of executive summary, it says, and I read, it said, ensured improved disco performance using various measures, improve disco performance by designing balanced incentives to ensure aggressive ATC and C loss reduction, e.g., through a metering program, 1, upgrade of distribution and transmission interface issues, and disco financial restructuring and capitalization, recapitalization, which brought me to the fact that this so-called privatization started in November 3rd, 2013. Within the performance contract they signed, they have 5 years review program. Instead of reviewing them, the BPE in his own wisdom, even though it's also part of their performance contract agreement which they signed, that they can write to the BPE and ask for a year extensions before the review. This is 2020.
But are you blaming the
we are now going to 7 years and there's no review?
Are you blaming the discos if the NERC or those other agencies don't perform their jobs?
Well, I want to say this, that if you have somebody that is lame and he carry loads on his head and he's bended and you like, look at it, why did this guy carry the loads and bend? You are looking at the hope, you are not looking at the down. I have said it over and over again, the privatization, you see, the then BPE, Dr. Onogorua was able to stipulate what they needed before they can privatize, which are 4.
Okay.
The 2 germane.
We'll come to that. But let me bring back Mr. Tomei on this one. Isn't there supposed to be some sort of charter on service delivery, assuming that they were going to go ahead with this review adjustment or whatever it's eventually called, such that if I'm paying more, I should have more time. Perhaps if I used to have 10 hours of electricity supply, if I'm going to pay more, I should have 18 hours of supply. And if you can't have 18 hours of supply, whatever amount of time I get, the subsequent ones will then be free. So that it's an agreement. I mean, as a law, you know that contract. So isn't there supposed to be that before this consumers can then say, all right, really and truly, this is not a bad deal or bad idea?
Chamberlain, you're absolutely correct. You see, what we are doing right now is that we're moving into the free market space. And a lot of the concerns you have will be addressed via contract. Already, as I spoke to you, there are consumer groups that are approaching discos who have committed to paying more in exchange for better service delivery. And what has happened is that these discos have gone to borrow and they have totally reworked connections to these customers. And in exchange for reliable supply, they are getting more and everybody's happy. Look at what's gone on with the Magodo residents. Look at what the GR residents in Ikeja are doing. We are planning it for our franchise areas. You see, it's come to the point where between consumers and the market, the discos, we should actually take matters into our hands because government is constrained in so many fronts. The big issue here is that because government cannot do the subsidy across board, it now looks like everybody's being held down. The gas players are pushing government in one direction, GenCo is in another, TCN, and at the end of the day, the last mile are the discos, and our interface is with our consumer groups. And right now, we need to talk with them, and we're talking with them. If we work with you,
Jump in,
you can.
but speak to this school of thought, because those
We're
who
already
think
having
the discos.
many cases.
My
where
apologies, if
consumer-
you can hear me. If you can hear me, there are those who think or who believe that the discos are holding some customers to ransom because, one, why is it that they won't allow customers go to another supplier who can meet with their obligation? I think I remember Lagos had the same problem some time ago, wherein if states were to generate their own electricity and they had excess, they wanted to sell to other people, discos are saying, no, you can't do that. Those are our customers. What is the current position about that one? Okay, I think we'll, we have some connection challenges, but we'll sort it out in a minute.
Definitely. But now it's clear what the discos want, obviously. I mean, we don't need to ask. But then I'm just curious. What is a way forward for you? Because if you're saying that you don't want this increase, so what do you want? Especially because they're saying we need to charge cost-reflective tariff. So what exactly?
How many times they want to charge cost-reflective tariff?
So you're saying this current tariff
February
is
3rd,
cost-reflective?
2016. No, 2015 was when they mooted the idea of increasing the electricity tariff. We went to court. Myself, Barrister Toluwani, who happened to be my friend. We went to court. We got an injunction against them in May 28, 2015, that they should let the status quo antebellum to be maintained. They disagree, disobey, and in June 13, 2016, we got the judgment against them, in which the judge at that time, Justice Mohammed Idris, said, and I quote, that the increase is illegal and is at best an executive rascality. And at the same time, in paragraph 3 of that judgment said, and I quote, that the first respondent or defendant shall not, do anything related to increase in electricity tariff without following the stipulated process in section 76.
What did the process say?
That is exactly what we are talking about. Efficiency, that is paragraph A, that I already all the time.
It's not a relative terminology, efficiency?
Efficiency is not relative in provisions of electricity. No relativity.
It is a technical standard.
In fact, let me give you what the comical side of our judgment that very day when we are adopting our brief. Throughout the sections of the period that the court session was going on, adjournment and here and there, whether by provision, by providence or what have you, the court was always on generator. So when my friend was running up, I was tipping him off that don't forget that we have always been here using generator. So it is part of that. That is to tell the judge and the honorable court that there has not been efficiency.
So what
and as it is read by Ayo the other time, it did not say that in collectivity. It said each licensee.
So what did you get? Who did you get the judgment against?
Against Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission. Unfortunately, the 11 disco came and they said they are an interested party and they joined us.
Part of the functions of the commission is these charges.
Yeah.
Section 32 sub D says to ensure that the prices charged by licensees are fair to consumers and are sufficient to allow the licensees to finance their activities and to allow for reasonable earnings for efficient operation.
Yes, the question is this. Are they doing anything to improve the service given to consumers?
That's discos. Sorry,
yes,
one moment.
Yes,
I'm talking about the NERC now.
Okay.
In which way would we say the NERC is falling short of these functions that you are talking about? Because you took the NERC or whoever to court, got these kind of injunctions, we're having issues with service delivery, we're having issues with power supply, and NERC doesn't seem to be up to the task. So the question then is the NRC incapable of performing its functions?
Luckily enough, we had our summit in 2019, September 26, and every one of them were present, including even the minister's representative. And the speech I presented that day was titled, NERC, the enablers of impunities of the discourse. In every ramification where the discourse is supposed to be checked and challenged as the right and the power of the NRC, NRC has gone to sleep. They rather compromise the value. For example, let me even use the current one. MAP program, the MAP scheme. The directive says that once you register, you pay within 10 days, you are to be metered. I can tell you some of my members, consumers out there that are watching, many have paid for the past 2 months, and there was nothing to meter. And the NERC will have no punitive measures against the disco. That's number one. Illegal disconnection is a criminal offense. There are processes in the connections schedules of 2007 in accordance with the Electric Power Sector Reform Act 2005.
That's a function of
Yeah,
regulatory body.
That is the function.
You're blaming discos.
No. Based on what Ayo asked me, that where are the disco faltering in this area? Okay. Where are they being lackadaisical? In all, I can say it to you that whatever you might have seen that the consumers are suffering in the hand of the disco is as a result of the lame duckness of the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission.
What do you think of this?
Okay. Part of what we're talking about is investment, because there's this value about investment. There's this talk about the dollar was at 190 something when we took over. One of the things that we fail to understand is if you take a look at the monies that have been given for bailouts, if you take a look at the subsidies that have been given for gas, if you also take a look at something that most Nigerians forget, that a ton of us are the ones who are actually investing in infrastructure. As I sit today in my estate, we have 3 transformers, which we bought. Most people are buying transformers, cables, whatever it is. It is the individuals that are continuing to fund the distribution system.
But the NERC has consistently told us, I do remember having them here,
I have
and they say, you're not supposed to buy some of those things. You
yes,
should not buy those things. So
see,
if you go out of your way and buy it,
yes,
who'd you blame?
Oh, okay.
You are not supposed to buy it,
Yep.
and then you will stay in darkness.
Not necessarily.
Okay, hold on. Sometimes you will, except you're vocal. Like I said, we are blessed in Lekki. We have a power group which we interface with them. The other thing he also spoke about was willing buyer, willing seller, which the vice president had brought up last time they were campaigning. Yes, there are people looking for value. The question is, yes, we will sign an agreement that says, guess what? It's 50 naira per kilowatt hour for 18 hours. However, if you do not deliver 18 hours, there's punitive measure in cost, as if you're not delivering that. If that's where we are going to free market, free buyer, free seller, fine. But currently, there has to be value. Because at the end of the day, to the consumer, it's not what you're charging me that is my cost of running my business or cost of living. It's what you're charging me plus the diesel or the petrol that I'm using that is my cost of doing business.
But, the way this thing is at the moment now, it's our 3 customers that are going to be affected directly. The D3 customers that I spoke to, they say, well, so far was maintaining status quo, so they don't have a problem. So at the moment, so if you get that judgment now, I'm looking at it from the perspective of discos and NERC.
They appeal and the laws
but
that they appeal.
how successful would you say this is going to be now? Because if D3 are saying, look, we don't have problems, just our 3. So doesn't that make it a little more challenging and tricky to blanket all of those discos and all of the consumers, painting them with one brush?
No, it can be, because the law does not recognize just a single customer. It doesn't. We have the residents, the R1, R2, R1 has been phased out. We have R2, we have C1, the commercial one. We have C2, who happen to be more or less, they call them maximum demand customer. And we have industrial. So you cannot lump us up because our consumption rates are not the same.
That's why they segregated them
into all these things and with different prices. And when you now say between the R2 and the industrial, organization's rate, we are going to have 79% increase. It is not acceptable even to the industrial people because they know very well that they are still going to use more of the diesel than the power. And the funny side of it is this. People don't even pay for what they use.
How do you mean?
Oh, they pay for darkness more. Why? There's no meter. These are the areas.
What about those who have it?
Oh, I mean,
he spoke about those estates.
What about
who have worked out an agreement?
Oh, this is an isolated. You see, in an ideal situation, that's
for his own disco.
Sorry?
That's for his own disco.
That's what I'm saying, that in an ideal situation, that's even supposed not to occur. But it's an isolated situation. So you cannot broadcast it and make it to be that which we all should accept.
I wonder how I'll tell those Magodo residents, this is not, you're not supposed to be enjoying.
Are they even enjoying it? Are they even? They are not. It's just, you see, the reason why the disco, we didn't even talk about load rejection. Why we talk about there is no light.
Because they'll tell you the Gencos is a different challenge entirely. But
gentlemen, Mr. Etomi said there is no money for them from the federal government. I can tell you that they have collected so many.
Well, unfortunately, we couldn't reestablish that connection with Mr. Etomi. We wanted to get this.
You understand? So, for me, I just believe that Nigeria should brace up.
I guess it's something that is going to keep going on. NERC says there will be a forum. So in that forum, gentlemen, we ought to make ourselves available wherever what they call it now, wherever they touch base.
Public forum.
Yeah, whatever the train of that forum touches, you need to go out there and get your voices heard. Well, we have to thank you both for coming on this morning, Mr. Diola Samuel and Mr. Joseph Ian. Thank you both for coming on today.
Well, thanks for having us. Okay, thanks.